You've arrived at Cozy Side Audio, where dreams begin with a story. Whether you're studying, journaling, or just chilling, this one's for you. If you vibe with this kind of content, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe for more.
Cozy Side Audio presents Class Clown, the Documentary. Chapter 1. Lights, Camera, Laughter. The morning sunlight poured through the classroom windows like it was auditioning for a romantic movie it would never actually be cast in. Dust motes drifted lazily in the golden air, sparkling over rows of desks that had seen more doodles than algebra. Somewhere in the distance, the school PA system crackled to life, delivering its daily reminder that youth was fleeting, breakfast was mandatory, and tardiness would be met with administrative scorn. Yuto Takahashi, Class 2. B's undisputed monarch of mischief, leaned back in his chair with the self-assured grin of a man who believed laughter was a divine right. His tie hung half-done, his hair stuck up like a rebellious pine tree, and his eyes shimmered with the particular glint reserved for people about to cause gentle chaos. Yuto, sit properly. Haruka Mizuno sighed from the next desk. Her ponytail was tied tight enough to strangle anxiety itself. She was president of the media club, and the only person at Siran High brave enough to document Yuto in his natural habitat. We're rolling in 10 minutes. Yuto raised a dramatic eyebrow. Rolling? Already? But I haven't prepared my acceptance speech for Best Documentary Subject. Haruka pinched the bridge of her nose. It's not an award show. It's a school project. That's what they said about the moon landing, Yuto murmured, eyes glinting. And look how that turned out. Sota Ishikawa, the quiet sound tech with headphones permanently glued around his neck, snorted without looking up from the camera rig. Pretty sure the moon landing didn't have your face in it, Yuto. Tragic oversight, Yuto replied. But fear not, for today we make history. Scene 1. The idea that should have stayed an idea. The media club had been running on fumes since their last project, a 30-minute interview about cafeteria portion sizes that only their homeroom teacher watched and promptly fell asleep to. Desperate for something lively, Haruka had uttered the words that would change the club's fate. Let's do a day-in-the-life documentary of someone interesting. She'd said it casually, sipping her juice box, not realizing the universe had been waiting patiently to deliver her punishment, because Yuto, sitting at the next table, immediately raised his hand. I volunteer as tribute. Haruka had groaned audibly. We're not filming you, Yuto. We need someone who actually does things. I do things, Yuto protested. I commit acts of public joy daily. Public nuisance, corrected Sota. Semantics, said Yuto. And that, as historians would later agree, was the precise moment chaos found its cameraman. Scene 2. Rolling. Now, the camera sat poised on a tripod at the back of the classroom, its lens glinting with anticipation. Yuto stood in front of it like a knight before battle, chest puffed out, grin weaponized. Haruka adjusted the focus. Okay, just act normal, pretend it's not even there. Normal, Yuto repeated, tasting the word like a foreign delicacy. Got it. Haruka pressed record. For approximately 4 minutes, Yuto genuinely tried. He sharpened his pencil. He copied the date from the board. He even nodded sagely at the math problems, as if contemplating the futility of existence. Then his eyes flicked toward the camera. Observe, he whispered dramatically, the sleepy student, unaware he is being observed by a far superior life form. The entire class froze. The sleepy student, Junpei, head buried in his arms, blinked groggily. Eh? Yuto crouched beside him, whisper narrating into a stolen microphone. He thinks he can nap in peace. He cannot. Laughter rippled through the room like falling dominoes. Even Haruka's disciplined expression cracked for half a second. Yuto, she hissed, you're ruining the take. I'm enhancing it, Yuto countered, striking a heroic pose. Authenticity. That's what documentaries crave. The teacher walked in at that exact moment, coffee in hand, face carved from granite. She paused, taking in the camera, the crouching Yuto, and the collective guilt of 30 teenagers. Mr. Takahashi, she said slowly, why is there a microphone in your hand? Yuto beamed. We're capturing the raw vibrancy of academic life, ma'am. The teacher sighed the sigh of someone who had already accepted the futility of control. Hand it over. Cut 2. Confiscated microphone. Fade to black. Scene 3. Lunchtime rebellion. By lunch, Yuto had regained possession of the microphone through means best left undocumented. The trio set up near the courtyard, camera rolling as students milled around under cherry trees that seemed perpetually mid-bloom, like they too refused to move on from spring. Ladies and gentlemen, Yuto announced, gesturing broadly, welcome to lunch hour, the reckoning. Today we explore the primal behavior of high schoolers in their natural feeding grounds. Do not call it that, Haruka said, munching her rice ball. Too late, already branded. Yuto crouched near a group of first years eating curry bread. Tell me, young scholars, what drives you to choose carbohydrates over vegetables? It tastes better, one answered. Ah, Yuto nodded solemnly. The eternal struggle between health and happiness. A tale as old as lunch itself. Soda kept the camera steady, chuckling quietly. You're impossible, man. And yet, here you are documenting my impossibility, Yuto shot back. Moments later, Yuto spotted the teacher from earlier, walking past with a bento box. Without hesitation, he whispered to the camera. Observe, the educator in her brief moment of reprieve, little does she know. Mr. Takahashi, came the teacher's weary voice, if you finish that sentence, you'll be editing detention footage tonight. Yuto froze, then slowly turned to the camera. Cut, he whispered. The predator has spotted us. Scene 4, Afternoon Reflections and Nonsense. Classes resumed. Yuto spent most of them pretending to take notes while secretly jotting down potential documentary quotes. His notebook brimmed with lines like, comedy is just tragedy with better timing, and never trust a silent hallway. After school, the media club gathered in their tiny clubroom. It smelled faintly of dust and instant noodles, the scent of teenage ambition. Haruka transferred the footage onto her laptop. Okay, let's see what we've got. They watched in silence as Yuto's face filled the screen. The first few clips were chaotic, but something about them worked. The laughter, the small smiles, even the teacher's sigh, it all felt oddly alive. Haruka leaned back, thoughtful. You know, this might actually be good. Yuto smirked. Of course it's good. You're filming art. It's not art, Soda said. It's barely coherent. Art is barely coherent, Yuto replied. That's what makes it profound. The three of them dissolved into laughter, the kind that made your ribs hurt in the best way. Outside, the sky turned orange, and the school's after-hours hum began to fade. Yuto glanced out the window, quiet for once. Hey, he said softly, you think anyone will actually want to watch this? Haruka blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, I think they will. Yuto's grin returned, wide and bright. Then tomorrow, we give them a sequel. Sota groaned, please no. Chapter 2. Confessions of a Class Clown. The camera blinked awake with a quiet click, and Yuto Takahashi, standing proudly in front of the clubroom chalkboard, clapped his hands together as though he'd just summoned an audience. Welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, and miscellaneous homeroom creatures, he declared. Today's episode, The Truth Revealed, a shocking expose of Class 2, B's deepest, darkest secrets. Don't say expose, Haruka said from behind the camera. We'll get in trouble. It's French, Yuto replied. Everything sounds classier in French. Not when you're interrogating our classmates. Yuto ignored her. Confessionals are the heart of every great documentary, he said, pacing like a professor mid-lecture. We must capture raw emotion, vulnerability, the trembling human soul. Soda, lounging by the editing laptop, cut in. You just want to make people say dumb stuff. Yuto gasped, hand over chest. Slander. I merely seek truth, and possibly ratings. It was lunchtime again, that sacred 30-minute window in which the school transformed from an institution of learning into a bustling market of gossip, laughter, and bread wrappers. Outside, cicadas screamed like unpaid extras desperate for attention. Inside, Yuto prepared his grand operation. A makeshift interview booth constructed from 2 folding chairs, a cardboard Studio Yuto sign, and Haruka's microphone, borrowed under vague pretenses. The first victim, as always, was Junpei, the professional napper. So, Junpei, Yuto began. Camera zoomed uncomfortably close to his sleepy face. Tell the world your greatest secret. Junpei blinked. My what? Your inner truth, the forbidden knowledge buried within your soul. I microwaved my curry bread twice once. Yuto gasped dramatically. Twice? It was cold in the middle? The pause that followed was long, reverent. Yuto nodded solemnly, courageous. Thank you for your service. Haruka groaned. This is going nowhere. But going nowhere was Yuto's natural ecosystem. Within 10 minutes, the booth became the hottest ticket in Class 2B. One by one, students lined up to spill secrets of tragic mundanity. I've been pretending to like mint chocolate for 3 years. I sometimes grade my own quizzes for fun. I don't actually know what mitochondria do. Yuto treated each confession like sacred scripture, gasping, clutching his chest, sometimes even tearing up with fake emotion. Yet in the midst of absurdity, something genuine began to emerge, and people who usually hid in the background, quiet, anxious, invisible, were laughing, talking, existing in front of a camera without fear. Then Kana from the back row approached. She was the kind of girl whose voice rarely rose above a whisper, the kind who always smiled politely, but never quite joined the noise. She stood before the camera, fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. Yuto grinned. Kana, my loyal viewer, what is your confession? She hesitated, then smiled shyly. I think you're really funny, Yuto. The room went still. Yuto blinked. Wait, that's your confession? She nodded. Yeah, I was scared to say it, but you make the day better. Even when you're, well, you. There was a small ripple of laughter from the others, soft and genuine. Yuto's grin faltered just for a moment, then reappeared, gentler. Thank you, Kana. Truly, he said, bowing with exaggerated flourish. This interview has been rated 5 stars. Haruka lowered the camera slightly, watching the two of them. For once, Yuto didn't break the moment with a joke. The air between them felt quiet, real. She realized then that maybe his clowning wasn't a distraction. It was an invitation, a permission slip to be silly, imperfect, alive. Of course, Yuto couldn't let that stand for long. Next, he yelled, throwing his arms wide. We need scandal, suspense, tears. Soda muttered from his seat. We need subtitles saying, please don't try this at home. By the end of the day, Studio Yuto had interviewed half the class and acquired approximately 12 hours of useless but glorious footage. Haruka watched the clips later, each one ending in laughter. The camera trembled constantly, sometimes from Yuto shaking it, sometimes because the person filming couldn't stop giggling. When the final clip rolled, Kana's smile, the quiet sincerity of it, Haruka found herself smiling too. The next morning, Yuto strutted into class, wearing sunglasses and a makeshift scarf that looked suspiciously like a dish towel. Good morning, my adoring public, he said. In light of yesterday's success, I will now be accepting fan letters. Fan letters? Haruka said. You made people confess they hate vegetables. Tragic honesty is the cornerstone of art. You're insufferable. And yet you keep filming me. Haruka rolled her eyes, but didn't deny it. Somewhere between the chaos and laughter, the camera had stopped feeling like a tool and started feeling like a friend, a tiny, blinking witness to the small, beautiful absurdities of their daily lives. As the bell rang and everyone settled into their seats, Yuto leaned back, folding his arms behind his head. The sunlight caught in his hair, bright as mischief. "Hey, Haruka," he said softly, not looking at her. "What do you think people will remember more? The funny parts or the real parts?" Haruka glanced at the camera, still on standby at the back of the room. "Maybe both," she said. "They're kind of the same thing." Yuto grinned, eyes closing as if to trap the warmth there. "Then I guess we're making history, huh?" "Something like that," she said. And with that, he sat up, raised a hand dramatically, and whispered, "Observe the diligent student. He believes he can study in peace. He cannot." The class erupted into laughter again. The documentary continued. Chapter 3, Hallway Heroics and the Slow-Mo Rebellion. Yuto Takahashi was late to class again. Technically, he wasn't that late, just late enough to turn walking into a performance art. The hallway stretched before him like an empty stage, sunlight pouring through the windows, footsteps echoing dramatically, a faint breeze fluttering the notices on the bulletin board. He could have just walked quietly to his classroom like any other second-year student. But Yuto, being Yuto, saw something different. He saw a cinematic opportunity. "Imagine it," he whispered to Sota, who was carrying the camera as they walked. Slow motion, hair flying, books in hand, the soundtrack swelling with destiny. "You're walking to math class," Sota said flatly. "There is no destiny." That's what they said to the first man who invented bread. I don't think anyone said that. But Yuto was already straightening his tie, adjusting his posture, and nodding solemnly to an invisible director. "All right, cue the wind, cue the lighting, cue the extras." "There are no extras. Then we'll make some." Within 10 minutes, Yuto had somehow convinced 5 classmates, Junpei, Kana, and 3 others, to help him stage what he called Operation Heroic Hallway Sequence. "Everyone gets a role," he declared, sketching wildly on the whiteboard near the stairwell, like a general planning a siege. "Junpei, you'll walk past me holding a stack of papers, symbolizing society's burden. Kana, you'll look out the window, lost in thought, representing unfulfilled dreams. And Sota, you'll handle camera duty. Make me look taller." "You're literally 5'9", Sota muttered. "Cinematic enhancement," Yuto countered. "Now, Haruka, Haruka raised a hand. "No, I'm not in this." "You'll regret those words when this wins the Palme d'Or," Yuto said gravely. "This is a hallway, not Cannes." "Every hallway is Ken if you walk with conviction." The first take was a disaster. Yuto tried to stride past Junpei in slow motion, but Junpei tripped, scattering papers everywhere. Kana's melancholy stare turned into laughter halfway through. Sota's hand slipped on the zoom, resulting in a shaky, overdramatic close-up of Yuto's shoe. The group watched the playback in the camera's tiny screen, faces pressed close together. The footage was terrible, blurred, crooked, full of background noise. It was also hilarious. Yuto pointed at the screen, eyes wide with wonder. "We've done it! We've captured raw humanity!" "You've captured my nose in HD," Sota said. "That's not humanity, that's harassment." "Perfection cannot be rushed," Yuto said, brushing imaginary dust off his blazer. "Let's go again." Word spread quickly. By the third period, half the classes had heard about Yuto's cinematic hallway project. By lunch, they were volunteering to appear in it. By the next day, it wasn't just 2. B students from other classes were showing up too. The hallway transformed into a film set. Someone brought a Bluetooth speaker for background music. Another person started tossing papers in the air during takes to simulate symbolic chaos. Even the student council president stopped to ask, "What exactly is happening here?" "Art," Yuto replied solemnly, camera tripod balanced on one shoulder. "Would you like a cameo?" The president stared at him, then shrugged. "Well, sure." The rebellion escalated. Soon there were slow-mo walk duels between rival groups. Some practiced poses during lunch breaks. Someone even tried to choreograph a full hallway sequence to a pop song, only to be shut down by the vice principal. When teachers finally caught on, they declared an official ban on unapproved filming activities during class hours. Yuto took this as confirmation of his artistic success. "They fear us because they don't understand us," he said, standing at the top of the stairwell like a revolutionary hero, cape fluttering, borrowed from the drama club. "But our spirits cannot be contained." "Your spirit's about to get detention," Haruka muttered. Yuto turned to her, eyes shining. "Every great movement begins with a misplaced camera angle." "You've been reading your own quotes again, haven't you?" "Somebody has to." The final shot, what Yuto grandly titled The March of Dreams, took place after school. The golden hour light slanted through the windows, painting everything in honey and dust. The hallways, usually chaotic, were quiet now, except for the faint hum of cicadas outside. Yuto walked alone this time. No extras, no props, no music. Just him and the echo of his shoes against the linoleum. Haruka filmed in silence, for once not saying a word. Yuto didn't look at the camera. He didn't narrate. He just walked. And somehow, that was enough. It wasn't heroic or rebellious or even that cinematic. It was just a boy walking down a hallway after another ordinary day of laughter. When he reached the end of the corridor, he turned around and grinned. "Did we get the shot?" Haruka nodded. "Yeah, we got it." "Good," he said, stretching his arms above his head, "because I think that was my Oscar moment." "More like your blooper reel," she teased. "Same thing," Yuto said. "History decides later." That evening, Haruka and Soda reviewed the footage. The early takes were all chaotic energy and laughter. Flying papers, offbeat music, Yuto tripping on camera cords. But the final shot stood out. Just a quiet hallway, the light shifting, the sound of Yuto's footsteps fading away. Soda leaned back in his chair. "You know," he said, "for all his nonsense, the guy's got presence." Haruka smiled faintly. "He does. He's ridiculous, but he's real." Soda glanced at her. "You kind of like filming him, don't you?" She pretended not to hear. "The focus was off in half these shots," she said briskly. "We'll need reshoots." But later that night, when she transferred the clips onto her laptop, she lingered on that last scene. Yuto's grin under the sunset. The camera had caught something unplanned, something honest. The hallway looked endless, filled with light. And in that glow, Yuto's laughter echoed again, soft and unstoppable. By the next morning, the slow-mo rebellion had officially ended. Teachers were patrolling the hallways like grumpy security guards, but the legend lived on. Copies of Yuto's March of Dreams spread around the student body through whispered USB trades. Even the principal was rumored to have watched it and laughed. And Yuto, of course, basked in the glory. As he entered class, someone started humming the dramatic background music. Another student began slow walking toward their desk in parody. Within seconds, the entire class had joined in. Yuto froze at the doorway, watching his own chaos reflected back at him. Then, dramatically, he dropped his bag, spread his arms wide, and shouted, "My people!" The class burst into laughter. That afternoon, the media club sat together in the courtyard, sunlight flickering through the trees. Yuto was lying on the grass, hands behind his head. "You know," he said lazily, "I think we might have changed the school." Haruka smirked. "You made everyone late to class." "Progress has casualties." Soda tossed a small twig at him. "You're an idiot." Yuto grinned, eyes closed. "And yet, history remembers the idiots." Haruka looked at him for a moment, his stupid grin, his unflappable energy, and couldn't help smiling too. "Fine," she said. "Tomorrow we film something quieter." Yuto cracked one eye open. "Quieter?" "Yeah," she said. "Like something real." Yuto thought for a moment, then smiled. "Real's fine," he said, "as long as it's funny." Chapter 4. Interview with the Sleepy. The bell marking first period had barely stopped echoing when Yuto whispered, "Observe, The migration patterns of the exhausted student? Don't start, Haruka murmured. She was balancing a camera on her desk, trying to look like she wasn't. Too late. Yuto was already crouched beside Junpei, the class's reigning nap champion, speaking into a pencil like it was a microphone. Subject has entered a deep hibernation, he narrated solemnly. He appears to be dreaming about freedom, or possibly fried chicken. Junpei opened one eye. Can you not? For science, Yuto declared. Tell us, oh sleepy one, what secrets lie beyond the veil of consciousness? Junpei yawned. That I shouldn't have stayed up watching anime until 2. Profound, Yuto said, nodding gravely. A man of culture. The class chuckled. The teacher hadn't arrived yet, which meant Yuto had a 5-minute window before authority struck. Haruka, despite herself, hit record. By lunchtime, Interview with the Sleepy had become a full-blown segment. Yuto set up a chair near the window, a blanket borrowed from the nurse's office, and a sign that read, Sleep Studies Division Volunteers Welcome. Haruka adjusted the tripod. You do realize you're turning our documentary into a talk show? Correction, Yuto said, straightening his imaginary tie. A scientifically rigorous exploration of the adolescent circadian rhythm. Rigorous, Soda muttered, flipping open his notebook. You spelled rhythm wrong on the sign. Yuto squinted at it. Artistic spelling. Adds flair. Junpei, predictably, was the first guest. He slumped into the chair, blanket over his shoulders, expression somewhere between exhaustion and enlightenment. Welcome, Yuto said, adopting the gravitas of a late-night host. Tell us, Junpei, what drives a man to pursue the noble craft of classroom napping? The chairs are comfortable, Junpei said. Compelling. They're not, actually, Kana added from the sidelines, giggling. You drool on them. Junpei shrugged. Art has consequences. Laughter rippled through the room. The camera wobbled slightly. Haruka was laughing too. Yuto took it further. He started rating nap techniques. The desk fold, 7/10 for stability, the arm pillow, 5/10 if you value circulation, and the textbook fortress, 10/10 for defensive utility. Other students lined up to demonstrate their own methods. It became half comedy routine, half collective nap therapy session. Kana tried one called the cat curl, tucking her knees up on the chair. Yuto, pretending to be a wildlife narrator, whispered, Notice how the specimen minimizes surface area to conserve warmth. Kana burst into laughter, falling out of her chair. Stop, I can't. Science never stops, Yuto replied solemnly. Even Haruka couldn't hide her grin behind the camera. It was ridiculous, but the laughter filling the room was light and easy, like a breeze you didn't notice until it lifted something heavy inside you. Halfway through filming, the classroom door slid open. Their homeroom teacher, Miss Ishida, appeared with a folder in hand and the expression of a woman who had long accepted her fate. Mr. Takahashi, she said, why is there a student asleep under a blanket, another on the floor, and a camera pointed at them? Yuto straightened immediately. It's for a school project. We're examining academic fatigue as a social phenomenon. Miss Ishida blinked. And you are? The researcher? The lead researcher, yes. Soda muttered, also the patient. Haruka braced herself for punishment, but Miss Ishida only sighed, the way clouds sigh before a light rain. Just don't block the hallway. As soon as she left, Yuto whispered, Success. We have administrative approval. No, you have pity, Haruka said. Same outcome, Yuto said cheerfully. Later, when most of the class had gone home, the club watched the day's footage. The images flickered across the small screen. Junpei drooping over his desk, kinda laughing until she hiccuped. Sota pretending to be a doctor taking pulse readings. Yuto leaned forward, chin in hand. Look at them. Ordinary people, doing extraordinary things, like sleeping at noon. You're impossible, Haruka said, smiling despite herself. Maybe, he said, but tell me that doesn't look happy. She didn't, because it did. Evening settled over the classroom, warm and orange. The camera's red light blinked softly. Yuto rested his head on the desk next to it. Observation log #47, he mumbled sleepily. Subject, class clown. Status, exhausted but content. Conclusion, laughter worth it. The room grew quiet except for the faint buzz of the cicadas outside. Haruka adjusted the focus, then turned the camera off. For a moment she just sat there, listening to Yuto snore gently, the faintest smile still on his face. And she thought, maybe that's what we've been recording all along? Not comedy, not chaos. Just how it feels to be together. When the bell rang the next morning, Yuto bounded into class, wide awake and grinning. Good news, he announced. The sleep studies division is expanding. Next project, breakfast interviews. Breakfast interviews? Haruka echoed. Yes, he said proudly. The most important meal deserves the most important journalism. Soda groaned. I'm bringing earplugs. Haruka rolled her eyes, but she was already reaching for the camera. Because no matter how absurd his ideas were, somehow Yuto always made the day brighter. And as he stood on a chair declaring the dawn of a new documentary era, she couldn't help but laugh. The camera clicked on. The laughter kept going. Chapter 5. The Great Cafeteria Coup. The first sign of trouble appeared just after the lunch bell. Yuto stood at the entrance of the cafeteria, arms crossed like a general surveying the battlefield. Steam rose from the serving stations, trays clattered, and the air buzzed with the energy of 200 hungry teenagers. Behold, Yuto whispered to Haruka, who was reluctantly following with the camera, the feeding grounds of the modern student. Tension is high, hunger is higher. The stakes, carriage level. You're narrating again, Haruka said. I'm living the dream, he countered. This is documentary gold. The plan, in Yuto's words, was simple. A high-stakes expose on the culinary underbelly of our school. In practice, it was him trying to film people eating lunch while delivering lines like, observe the predator as he circles the curry station. Patience, precision. Oh, he's out of rice. Tragic. Haruka tried to look professional, but every few seconds she had to stifle a laugh. Soda trailed behind with a boom mic he'd borrowed from the AV closet, muttering, I can't believe we're doing this again. Kana joined too, tray in hand. Are we seriously documenting lunch? Not lunch, Yuto said. A cultural phenomenon. The ritual of courage consumption defines this generation. That's deep, Kana said. I'm shallow but committed, he replied. For 10 minutes, things went smoothly. Yuto interviewed students about their food preferences. Ketchup or soy sauce. Answer carefully. Your legacy depends on it. He filmed slow-motion shots of chopsticks rising heroically toward the light. He even attempted an artistic montage involving a spinning tray, which ended with the tray crashing into Soda's leg. Then came the catastrophe. A voice from the serving counter shouted, We're out of carriage. Time froze. The cafeteria fell silent. Someone dropped a spoon. A single rice grain hit the floor in slow motion. Yuto gasped like a man witnessing history unfold. They've run out of the main course. The empire has fallen. Within seconds, Yuto had climbed onto a bench. Comrades, he bellowed, one chopstick raised like a flag. They said the courage was endless. They said justice came with soy sauce. But today we are betrayed. Sit down, Soda hissed, trying not to laugh. But it was too late. The students nearby were already cheering him on. Someone handed him a napkin, which he immediately tied around his head like a revolutionary bandana. Haruka, camera trembling from laughter, filmed as Yuto delivered an impassioned speech. We demand truth, transparency, and maybe one extra serving of fries. We shall not go quietly into this hunger. Kana joined in, pretending to wave an invisible flag. Long live the cafeteria. Even Junpei, barely awake, mumbled, Power to the hungry. The lunch lady, Mrs. Takeda, emerged from the kitchen like a storm in an apron. She was short, fierce, and utterly unimpressed. "Takahashi Yuto," she said, arms folded. "Explain yourself." "Ma'am," Yuto said, standing at attention, "we're documenting a culinary crisis." "A what?" "A shortage of carriage, the soul of our lunch culture." She gave him the look of someone weighing whether to scold him or laugh. "It's not a crisis. The shipment was small today. We'll have more tomorrow." "But what of the people's morale?" Yuto cried. "Then they'll survive on curry like they always do." Yuto paused. Then dramatically he knelt. "Madam Chef," he said solemnly, "you have done all you can in the face of adversity. On behalf of the student body, we salute your bravery." Mrs. Takeda blinked. "You're a strange child." Haruka snorted behind the camera. Before she could stop him, Yuto grabbed a napkin, folded it like a medal, and placed it in Mrs. Takeda's hand. "For services to the hungry masses." The entire cafeteria applauded. For a moment, even Mrs. Takeda couldn't help but smile. All right, she said, waving them off. "Get your lunches before everything's cold." Later, back in the clubroom, the group replayed the footage. On screen, Yuto waving chopsticks like torches, Kana laughing so hard she dropped her tray. Mrs. Takeda accepting her award with mock seriousness. Haruka shook her head. "You're unbelievable." "Unbelievably passionate about fried chicken," Yuto corrected. Soda was editing the audio, still chuckling. "You realize this is going to be the highlight of the documentary, right?" "Good," Yuto said, lounging in a chair. "Let future generations know we fought for flavor." As the laughter faded, Haruka looked at the final frame, Yuto grinning beside the kitchen counter, Mrs. Takeda waving shyly at the camera. There was something oddly touching about it. In the middle of all the chaos and noise, he'd found a way to make everyone smile again. Yuto noticed her watching. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," she said. "Just thinking you might be the only person who can turn a lunch shortage into a festival." "Hey," Yuto said, grinning. "Documentary rule number 2. When the world gives you no carriage, make comedy." Haruka rolled her eyes but smiled anyway. "That's not even a saying." "It is now." The next day, someone had taped a sign above the serving counter. "Carriage is back, thanks, Yuto." Yuto saluted it like a hero returning home. The cafeteria burst into applause again. Haruka caught it all on camera. Because that was the secret of Yuto Takahashi, class clown and accidental filmmaker. He didn't just make people laugh. He reminded them that every ordinary day could be a story worth telling. Chapter 6. The Group Project. That filmed itself. It started, as most disasters do, with the teacher saying, "This will be a fun group assignment." The class collectively groaned. Miss Ishida clapped her hands. "For the cultural festival, each homeroom will submit a short film. You can choose any genre, drama, comedy, documentary." At the word documentary, Yuto sat up so fast, his chair squeaked like a dying violin. "Miss Ishida," he said, eyes blazing, "I was born for this moment." Haruka groaned into her notebook. Oh no. By lunch break, Yuto had gathered the media club around a whiteboard. He slammed a marker down dramatically. "All right, team. We've been tasked with creating art, with capturing truth, with finishing before the festival," Soda interrupted. "Yes, with finishing before the festival," Yuto conceded. "Now, we already have a film in progress. The documentary. It's perfect. We'll polish it up and submit it as our class project." Haruka frowned. "You mean the one where you pretend to be a nature show host? And where half the footage is you tripping over your own microphone cable?" "Precisely," Yuto said. "Raw, honest, visceral." Kana bit back a laugh. "Unedited chaos, you mean." "Chaos," Yuto declared, "is authenticity wearing sunglasses." He started assigning roles with the enthusiasm of a man directing an Oscar contender. "Haruka, you're the producer. Stoic, serious, the unsung hero of post-production. You'll wear glasses and sigh meaningfully a lot." "I already do," she said flatly. "Soda, you're the sound guy, tortured, underappreciated, harboring dreams of stardom." Sota looked up from his phone. That's scarily accurate. And I, Yuto said, standing on his chair for maximum authority, am the misunderstood genius, the visionary, the artist shackled by convention. Also the reason we keep getting banned from using the teacher's tripod, Kana said. Yuto ignored her. Now, to work. The revolution of cinema waits for no man. Their first shoot began after school. Yuto insisted they treat it like a professional set, which mostly meant yelling, "Action!" every 30 seconds and refusing to retake anything that made people laugh. The result? A montage of accidental comedy gold. Kana tried to film a serious hallway scene, but slipped on her own shoelace, screaming, "I'm method acting," as she fell. Sota caught it on camera, muttering, "That's staying in." Haruka tried to direct them into a proper shot composition, but ended up in frame, pointing angrily at Yuto, who immediately dubbed it Producer Meltdown, Take 3. At one point, Junpei wandered by, half asleep and holding a soda, and somehow got roped into a cameo as Man Who Has Seen Too Much. By the end of the day, the script had completely fallen apart, but the laughter had doubled. 2 days later, Haruka sat in the editing room, staring at the footage. It was a disaster, a glorious, cinematic disaster. She sighed. There's no storyline, just Yuto being Yuto. Sota leaned over. You could make that the storyline. Haruka blinked. He shrugged. I mean, think about it. The project is about making a film, right? So, what if the film is about making a film that keeps falling apart? She paused and then smiled. That's actually brilliant. The next morning, they pitched the new concept to Yuto. So, you're saying, he said slowly, the movie is about us trying and failing to make a movie. Exactly, Haruka said. A documentary about a documentary. Yuto's eyes widened like he'd just seen the universe open before him. Genius, pure meta-genius. We'll call it, Behind the Laughs, a Tragedy in Progress. It's not a tragedy, Kana said. It will be if you forget to hit record again, Sota added. Filming restarted, this time intentionally chaotic. Yuto narrated everything dramatically. Observe the producer losing faith in humanity. Observe the camerawoman questioning her life choices. Haruka deadpanned directly into the lens. I'm starting to think he's just documenting my slow descent into madness. Meanwhile, Kana and Sota staged fake, creative differences in the background. I refuse to work under these conditions, Kana shouted, waving a notebook. You literally spilled juice on the lens, Sota yelled back. Yuto filmed it all, tears of laughter streaming down his face. Beautiful, raw emotion, cinema. When they showed a rough cut to the class, everyone expected nonsense. And to be fair, it was nonsense, but it was glorious nonsense. The opening shot, Yuto dramatically walking into frame, holding a camera upside down. The midpoint, Haruka delivering an overly serious interview about artistic integrity, while Yuto photobombed behind her with a broom mustache. The ending, the group collapsing in laughter around the tripod as the camera slowly tilted and fell over. The class erupted in applause. Mrs. Shida wiped tears of laughter from her eyes. I don't know what I just watched, she said, but it was oddly inspiring. Art, Yuto said simply, bowing. Pure art. That evening, as the club packed up, Haruka looked at the whiteboard full of scribbles, doodles, and coffee stains. We didn't really plan any of this, she said. Exactly, Yuto replied. And yet here we are, filmmakers. Kana tossed him a snack bar. So what's the moral of the story, Director Genius? Yuto caught it, thinking for a moment. That the best movies aren't about perfect takes. They're about perfect moments. Sota rolled his eyes, but there was a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. You're so full of it. Full of vision, Yuto corrected. Full of something, Haruka muttered. They all laughed. A week later, their entry played at the cultural festival. Laughter filled the gymnasium. Students cheered. The ending credits rolled with the simple message, dedicated to everyone who's ever failed spectacularly and had fun doing it. As the applause swelled, Yuto whispered, "We did it." Haruka smiled. "You mean it filmed itself?" He shrugged. "Maybe the best stories always do." The screen faded to black. And for one perfect moment surrounded by friends, Yuto felt like a real director after all. Chapter 7. The Substitute Teacher. Incident. The morning started suspiciously normal, which for Class 2B was in itself suspicious. Desks were neatly arranged, no camera tripods were in sight, and Yuto, class clown, chaos distributor, and self-appointed documentary star, was sitting quietly at his desk. Haruka narrowed her eyes. "You're behaving." Yuto nodded solemnly. "Every story needs contrast. Today, I'm the calm before the storm." "I hate how that actually sounds like foreshadowing," Soda muttered. Then the door slid open. "Good morning, everyone." A young man with two bright eyes and an even brighter tie stepped into the classroom. He was smiling the kind of smile that only new teachers or doomed heroes had. "I'm Mr. Fujimoto," he said cheerfully. "I'll be your substitute for the next 2 weeks." Haruka felt her stomach sink. "Oh no." Yuto's grin spread like sunrise. "Oh yes." At first, Yuto tried to be subtle. He raised his hand and asked, "Sensei, do you mind if we film this class for a sociological experiment?" Fujimoto blinked. "What kind of experiment?" "An observational study on the behavioral patterns of the modern educator under mild pressure." Haruka hissed, "Yuto." But Fujimoto laughed, clearly charmed. "Well, as long as it's appropriate and doesn't disrupt learning." "Understood," Yuto said, already setting up the tripod. Soda buried his face in his hands. He gave him permission. "We're doomed." 5 minutes into the lesson, Yuto started whispering into the mic. "Observe the substitute," he said in a low documentary voice. New to the environment, he projects confidence to mask the natural fear of adolescents in their native habitat. "Mr. Takahashi," Fujimoto said good-naturedly, "I can hear you." "Excellent," Yuto said. "Authentic reactions are key." The class giggled. Haruka tried to look apologetic, mouthing, "Sorry," behind the camera. But Fujimoto, bless him, actually played along. "And thus," he said, picking up a piece of chalk, "the educator establishes dominance through the ritual of writing on the board." The class exploded into laughter. Yuto gasped, "He narrates back!" From that point on, all control evaporated. Yuto turned the entire day into a co-teaching documentary. Fujimoto leaned into the bit like he'd been waiting his whole life for improv day. "Now," Fujimoto said dramatically, "we shall explore the feeding habits of the distracted student. Observe how she pretends to listen while secretly unwrapping candy under the desk." The student in question froze mid-crinkle. "Flawless stealth technique," Yuto whispered, pointing the mic toward her. Haruka was laughing so hard the camera shook. Even Sota, usually the voice of reason, had tears in his eyes. "I can't believe this guy's actually doing it." During math period, Fujimoto drew a massive triangle on the board. "Behold," he declared, "the apex predator of geometry." Yuto stepped in front of the camera, dead serious. Few creatures inspire such awe. The triangle, symbol of stability, or harbinger of doom. Kana raised her hand. "Both?" "Correct," Fujimoto said immediately. "The duality of the hypotenuse." The entire class erupted. At one point, Fujimoto pretended to interview Yuto as a rare classroom specimen. "Tell me," the teacher said, holding out an eraser like a microphone, "what drives a student to perform so dramatically?" "An insatiable thirst," Yuto said gravely. "For knowledge? For screen time." Even Mrs. Shida, walking by the classroom, paused to peer inside. She saw a teacher pretending to stalk students with chalk like a wildlife biologist, and Yuto rolling on the floor doing dramatic narration. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. They're all laughing, she thought. Let them be. And walked away. After class, Yuto approached Fujimoto as the students packed up. Sensei, he said earnestly, I've worked with many professionals in the field of chaos, but your natural improvisational instincts are sublime. Fujimoto laughed. You're quite the character, Takahashi. Correction, Yuto said. I'm the subject. You're the star. Let's call it a collaboration, Fujimoto replied. Haruka, still holding the camera, smiled. You realize you just made Yuto's entire semester. Yuto nodded seriously. He's the first teacher who didn't just survive my documentary. He joined it. The next day, Fujimoto returned. Tie slightly crooked, smile even wider. All right, class, he said, holding up the chalk like a microphone. Welcome back to Life in 2B, Episode 2. Yuto stood immediately. Permission to co-host? Granted, Fujimoto said. Let's roll. And just like that, chaos became tradition. They did dramatic zooms every morning. Good morning, zoom in, narrated test reviews like spy thrillers, and introduced math equations as plot twists. The laughter in 2B didn't stop for the next 2 weeks. When Fujimoto's last day arrived, the class gave him a farewell card. Yuto insisted they film it, of course. Final interview, he said softly, holding the mic. How does it feel, Sensei, to be leaving behind such a wild ecosystem? Fujimoto smiled. Like being released into the world after a beautiful dream. Would you ever return? Yuto asked. In a heartbeat, Fujimoto said, assuming I survive grading your quiz papers. Everyone laughed. Haruka turned off the camera and exhaled. For once, even Yuto was quiet, just smiling. Like he knew this was a rare kind of magic you couldn't script. That evening, as the club watched the footage in their cozy club room, Haruka said, You realize this might be the best episode of the whole documentary, right? Yuto nodded. It's because it wasn't just about me this time. It was about a teacher who joined the joke. Soda leaned back, arms behind his head. Maybe that's the secret of your documentaries. They don't capture chaos. They invite people into it. Yuto grinned. Documentary rule number 3, laughter is the world's most cooperative act. The next morning, Miss Ishida returned as their regular teacher. All right, class, she said, opening her folder. Let's have a quiet, focused start to the day. The entire class turned to Yuto. He hesitated. Too soon? Too soon, Haruka said. Yuto raised his hands in surrender. But when Miss Ishida turned around to write on the board, Yuto leaned toward the camera and whispered, Observe, the natural order restored. But for how long? The camera light blinked red. And the legend of the substitute teacher incident was officially immortalized. Chapter 8. Clubroom Chronicles. After the whirlwind that was the substitute teacher incident, Class 2B felt almost peaceful. Almost. Yuto had promised that he'd take a break from filming for one day. Creative rest, he called it. Even geniuses need to recharge their comedic batteries. Haruka wasn't convinced. Last time you said that, you built a fake confession scene in front of the vending machines. That was research, Yuto protested. For the sake of authenticity. Soda raised an eyebrow. Authentically traumatizing, maybe. But true to his word, Yuto walked into the media club room that afternoon empty-handed. No camera, no mic, just a bag of snacks and a suspicious grin. The club room itself was their little kingdom of chaos, cramped, warm, and decorated with everything from old film reels to doodled posters that read, Media Club, where reality takes a coffee break. There were beanbags that had seen better days, a mini-fridge that hummed louder than some of the members, and a corkboard plastered with ideas like Yuto's breakfast routine, the documentary nobody asked for. Today, though, the space was calm. The late afternoon sunlight spilled through the window, dust motes dancing lazily in the golden air. Haruka stretched and smiled. For once, it actually feels like a normal club day. Tragic? Yuto said, lying upside down on the beanbag. Normal is the enemy of content. Can we just exist for 5 minutes? Soda asked, without you turning existence into a bit? Yuto considered that. Define 5 minutes. Haruka opened her laptop, pulling up the editing software. I was thinking we should finally clean up the footage backlog. There's like 7 hours of hallway slow motion. Art can't be rushed, Yuto said, eyes closed. Or deleted. You're literally eating into my hard drive, she said flatly. Good art deserves storage space. Good art doesn't include you trying to dramatically narrate someone using the pencil sharpener. Yuto opened one eye. You laughed. Against my will. Soda chuckled from the couch. You two are like a married couple, but your vows were made to Adobe Premiere. Till lag do us part, Haruka deadpanned. They spent the next hour editing together, or rather, Haruka edited, while Yuto and Sota provided creative feedback. Cut that shot earlier, Sota said. It drags too long. But that's where I flip my hair in slow motion, Yuto protested. That's why it drags, Haruka said. Leave it, Yuto said dramatically. The hair flip represents liberation from societal constraints. Haruka turned to him. It represents your inability to take direction. He grinned. Same thing. As they worked, Kana and Minori arrived, arms full of convenience store snacks. We got drinks, Kana announced. And those weird matcha cookies you like, Yuto. Yuto clutched his chest. You remembered my brand of chaos fuel. Please don't call it that, Sota muttered. The clubroom became a soft buzz of life-typing keys, crinkling wrappers, gentle teasing. Kana started doodling storyboards for their next video. Minori set up her camera to test a new lighting trick. Haruka was lost in editing rhythm. Sota scrolled through sound effects. And Yuto was suspiciously quiet. Hey, Haruka said without looking up. What are you plotting? Yuto, seated cross-legged on the floor, was surrounded by a pile of random props. Sunglasses, a rubber chicken, a fake microphone, and a small whiteboard that said, Clubroom Confessions. I am, he said proudly, conducting interviews. For a new segment. Sota groaned. What kind of segment? Behind the documentary. A look into the souls of those brave enough to film a clown. Kana giggled. I'm in. And just like that, Yuto was back in his natural habitat. He pointed the fake mic at Minori first. Tell us, dedicated camerawoman, what drives you to film such madness day after day? Minori smiled shyly. Because it's fun. And because Yuto does at least 3 stupidly photogenic things per hour. I am a gift to lenses everywhere, Yuto said solemnly. Next was Sota. Resident critic, Yuto announced. What is your secret to tolerating me? Sota didn't hesitate. Selective hearing. Fair. Then Haruka. Director, editor, emotional anchor. What's it like being the glue that holds this disaster together? She smirked. Sticky. Everyone laughed. Yuto lowered the mic, grinning. You guys realize you're making this the best documentary ever, right? Because of your genius? Haruka teased. No, he said softly. Because you all play along. Evening drifted in. The sun turned the window orange gold. Someone put music on something mellow and lazy, just the hum of a good day winding down. Yuto sat back, watching his friends through the camera lens. Haruka typing with her brows furrowed, Kana sketching on the floor, Sota eating chips with the focus of a monk, Minori adjusting the light for no reason except curiosity. He smiled. Hey, he said, you know what I realized? No, Haruka said automatically. And I'm afraid to ask. Yuto grinned. This documentary isn't about me anymore. Sota glanced up. You mean you finally learned humility? No, Yuto said. I mean it's about us. The people who make fun of each other for fun. The clubroom that smells like instant noodles and creativity. The way we all accidentally made something real. There was a short silence. Then Haruka said quietly, Okay, that was almost profound. Who are you and what have you done with Yuto? I contain multitudes, he said. Mostly jokes, but sometimes sentiment. Later, as they packed up for the day, Haruka lingered a little. She looked around the room, the messy desks, the tangled cords, the whiteboard covered in doodles. Hey, she said softly, when we graduate, do you think we'll still do this? Yuto tilted his head. You mean make dumb videos? Yeah, or something. He smiled. Of course. We're not making videos. We're making memories. Cameras are just an excuse. Haruka rolled her eyes. You're getting sappy again. Artistic honesty, he corrected. Sota sighed. He's weaponizing sentimentality now. Before they left, Yuto grabbed the camera and turned it on one last time. Yeah, he pointed it at himself, eyes shining with mischief. Clubroom Chronicles, he said softly. A tale of laughter, laziness, and the occasional emotional depth that sneaks in when you least expect it. Tune in next time when we accidentally break a printer and call it performance art. The camera blinked red. Recording. Haruka laughed. You just had to end on that note, didn't you? Yuto winked. A clown's work is never done. He shut off the camera. And in the quiet that followed, the clubroom felt full not just of sound, but of something warmer. The kind of feeling you don't need to film to remember. Chapter 9, Field Trip Fiasco. There are 3 things the students of Class 2B fear. Surprise quizzes, the lunch line running out of carriage, and Yuto being allowed to bring a camera on a field trip. Unfortunately, number 3 was happening today. Departure, the calm before the clown. Remember, said Haruka, adjusting her backpack straps like a seasoned general preparing for battle. You're not allowed to film on the bus without permission. Yuto saluted. Permission granted by me, the director. That's not binding in any legal sense, I know, he said, already holding up his camera to the morning sunlight like it was the Holy Grail. Ah, behold, the dawn of adventure. The scent of canned coffee and adolescent chaos fills the air. Sota groaned. It's 6:45 a.m. Please don't narrate. The bus idled outside the school gates, rows of students milling about. Teachers shouted headcounts. Someone had already forgotten their bento. It was peak pre-departure chaos. The media club, clustered together, carried more camera equipment than actual luggage. Minori was checking batteries. Kana was sketching an itinerary comic titled Surviving Yuto, a Field Guide. Haruka sighed. This is going to be a long day. It'll be fine, said Sota, yawning, as long as he doesn't interview the driver again. Yuto blinked innocently. In my defense, he had the face of a man with stories. En route entertainment. 30 minutes into the trip, most students were dozing. The hum of the highway mixed with the soft clatter of snacks being opened. Yuto, of course, was wide awake, camera trained on the back of Haruka's head. Observe, he whispered dramatically. The rare species known as the editor in transit. Notice how she clutches her laptop like a sacred relic. Haruka's hand shot up, covering the lens. Observe the documentarian being strangled in his sleep. The students around them snickered. Sota leaned over. Can you not? You're giving me motion sickness and secondhand embarrassment. Documentary rule number 2, Yuto replied solemnly. Never stop recording, even when the world begs you to. The teacher at the front stood up. Yuto, no filming the driver. Yuto turned the camera on himself. And so, dear viewers, oppression strikes early on this journey. The artistic spirit, silenced. Arrival, scenic disaster. The destination was a nature park, mountains in the distance, clear blue sky, and a suspiciously serene lake that looked tailor-made for a no swimming sign. As students poured out of the buses, Yuto inhaled deeply. Ah, the smell of moss, sunscreen, and repressed teenage angst. Sota elbowed him. You promised. No fake interviews, no nature monologues. I did? Yes, in writing. Oh, those are just creative contracts, Yuto said, waving a hand. Flexible. Within minutes, he was already narrating again. Observe the natural order of field trips, the pack instinct. Students cluster for photos, others scatter in search of shade, but one brave soul seeks content. Yuto, Haruka barked. Get down from the rock. Filmmakers must rise, both metaphorically and physically. You're literally blocking the teacher's safety speech. He struck a pose. Art cannot hear the rules from so low a height. Lunch. The great bento betrayal. By midday, the group gathered in a grassy clearing to eat. The scene was idyllic, cicadas humming, the occasional camera click, the air filled with chatter. Yuto, of course, had appointed himself culinary documentarian. He crouched beside Sota, mic in hand. Sir, tell us about your bento philosophy. Sota chewed slowly. Eat food, don't drop it, that's it. Minimalist, Yuto mused. A raw, unfiltered approach to gastronomy. Moving on, he found Kana, whose bento was picture-perfect, bright, colorful, neatly arranged. Ah, contrast, he declared. The visual storytelling of food. Kana giggled. You're narrating salad again. Every leaf tells a tale, he said reverently. Then came disaster. When Yuto finally opened his bento, it was tragically empty, a packing error or cosmic punishment for hubris. The camera rolled as he gasped. A void. The cruel indifference of the culinary gods. Haruka handed him half her sandwich. You're unbelievable. Yuto pressed a hand to his chest. Sharing food, friendship's most sacred right. This moment will be immortalized. You're welcome. Now stop filming me eating. Afternoon, chaos in the wild. After lunch came the educational portion, a guided nature hike. The teachers hoped for quiet observation and respectful learning. They got Yuto. Welcome, viewers, to Untamed Japan. Episode 2, he whispered, crouching behind a bush. Our prey today? The elusive teacher in a panic. The guide paused in mid-speech, glancing nervously at the whispering student. Everything okay back there? Just documenting the majesty of organized authority, Yuto said. Sota whispered, You're going to get banned from nature. Halfway through the hike, Minori tripped, her camera rolling into the grass. Yuto swooped in like a dramatic rescuer, holding it aloft. I have retrieved the fallen comrade. The lens survives. Haruka sighed. You act like we're in a war movie. We are, he said, a war against boredom. The bus ride home, aftermath of genius. As the sun dipped low, the students collapsed into their seats, exhausted. The teachers, too, looked seconds away from unconsciousness. Yuto, somehow still energized, reviewed his footage. Behold, 57 clips of brilliance. 57 clips of you narrating trees, Haruka corrected. And 2 of you smiling, he said softly, which makes it all worth it. She looked away, embarrassed. You're ridiculous. I prefer visionary fool. Sota leaned in. So, what's the title of today's documentary? Yuto thought for a moment, eyes sparkling. Field Trip Fiasco. The Journey of Snacks, Sunscreen, and Spiritual Growth. Spiritual growth? I tripped over enlightenment near the vending machine. Epilogue. The legend expands. Back at school, the media club gathered in the clubroom, dumping memory cards onto Haruka's laptop. The footage was shaky, messy, and half useless but alive. You could feel the laughter in every frame. Kana leaned on Yuto's shoulder. You really can turn anything into an adventure. Yuto smiled. That's the trick. Every day's a story. You just have to act like the camera's already rolling. Haruka paused, watching a clip where the whole class laughed as Yuto tripped over a branch, but kept narrating mid-fall. You know, she said, this might be my favorite one yet. Because of my impeccable cinematography? No, she said, because it's us. Just being happy. Yuto's grin softened. Then let's keep rolling. And the lens blinked red again. Another day, another masterpiece of laughter and light. Because for Yuto, life wasn't a documentary. It was a comedy in progress. Chapter 10, Midterm Madness, a study in comedy. There are two types of students before midterms: those who panic quietly and those who panic loudly. Yuto was both. The media club had gathered in their usual spot after school. The whiteboard was covered in half-erased doodles from their last meeting. Clubroom Chronicles had ended with Yuto's dramatic speech about creative destiny. But now it was overwritten with something far more terrifying: math. Exams are next week, Haruka said firmly, tapping the marker against the board. So tonight we study. Study, Yuto repeated, as though tasting an unfamiliar foreign word. Like, voluntarily? Yes. Sota looked up from his notebook. You do know what studying is, right? Of course I do, Yuto said, already climbing onto a chair like a man addressing a nation. It's the art of pretending to understand while secretly manifesting divine luck. Haruka sighed. This is exactly why you almost failed history last term. I was testing the limits of suspense. Kana sat cross-legged on the floor, textbooks spread around her. Yuto, if you want to film something for the documentary, make it about us actually working hard for once. Yuto froze mid-speech. Actually, that's brilliant. Oh no, said Sota. He's having an idea. Yuto leapt down and spun to face them, eyes shining. My friends, I present to you. He grabbed a marker and scrawled across the board in huge, lopsided letters. Who wants to not fail this test? Haruka blinked. No. Sota groaned. Absolutely not. Kana clapped. I'm listening. Within 15 minutes, the clubroom had transformed into something between a classroom and a chaotic game show set. Yuto had dragged the standing lamp to the corner and aimed it dramatically like a spotlight. Haruka's laptop played the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire theme from YouTube. Kana doodled a studio audience sign that she made Sota hold up whenever Yuto pointed dramatically at the ceiling. Minori adjusted the camera, whispering, This is either your worst or best idea. Both, Yuto declared. True art is multidimensional failure. The rules were simple. Yuto, the self-appointed host, would quiz his classmates on their study material. Answer correctly, 1 point closer to academic immortality. Answer wrong, face the wheel of trivial consequences. A spinning chart of punishments Yuto drew that included things like dramatic monologue, haiku of regret, and interpretive dance of failure. Haruka rubbed her temples. This is ridiculous. Educationally ridiculous, Yuto said. The best kind. The game began. Welcome, viewers, Yuto announced in his best TV voice, to the only show where students fight for their dignity and their GPA. Our first contestant, Haruka the overachiever, Mizuno. Haruka stood up reluctantly. If I play, will you stop doing the voice? Doubtful. Question 1. What year did the Meiji Restoration begin? 1868, she said instantly. A burst of applause from the imaginary audience. Sota clapping once, deadpan. Correct, Yuto said, pressing a random button on Haruka's laptop that played atada sound effect. Wow, Kana whispered. He's dangerously good at this. Next up was Sota. Contestant number 2, Yuto said. The man of mystery, the legend of last-minute cramming. I'd rather not, Sota muttered. Yuto ignored him. Math category. What's the derivative of 3 by 2, 2x7? Sota blinked. 0.6x2. Correct, you win. Yuto rifled through his bag and held up a half-eaten cookie. A symbolic snack of success. Haruka sighed. You're going to get crumbs on the equipment. Yuto turned to the camera. She says that now, but wait till I reveal the emotional montage about friendship through algebra. Kana volunteered next. Question me, sensei of nonsense. Yuto bowed. My favorite title so far. All right, English vocabulary, define meticulous. Careful and precise, Kana said with confidence. Correct, audience, please. Sota raised the applause sign with all the enthusiasm of a broken printer. Minori zoomed in dramatically. We're actually learning, she whispered behind the camera. This is terrifying. The chaos continued. Whenever someone got an answer wrong, Yuto spun the wheel of trivial consequences. Haruka had to recite a haiku about geometry. Triangles we meet 3 points of eternal pain, math is forever. Kana did a mock newscast about losing her eraser, and Soda had to deliver a dramatic reading of the periodic table. But somewhere between the laughter and the dumb punishments, something strange started happening. They actually remembered things. Yuto's over-the-top repetition of facts made them stick. Haruka started enjoying herself. Kana began making flashcards, styled like game show buzzers. Soda even started helping Yuto frame questions correctly. Is this what learning is supposed to feel like? Kana asked, genuinely curious. Like suffering but with better lighting? Yuto replied. No, said Haruka, smiling despite herself. Like fun. Hours passed without anyone noticing. The clubroom glowed with warm lamplight. Laughter spilled out the door. Outside, the janitor paused, smiling faintly as he heard someone shout, "Final question for 10 million points," followed by a chorus of cheers. Inside, Haruka answered a history question flawlessly and jumped to her feet. Yes! Yuto thrust a notebook into her hands like a trophy. Ladies and gentlemen, we have witnessed greatness. You're unbelievable, she said, beaming. I'm educationally unbelievable, he corrected. By the end of the night, the whiteboard was filled not just with doodles, but real study notes, circled key terms, quick math formulas, even mnemonic rhymes that Yuto had made up mid-joke but somehow worked. Haruka closed her laptop, looking around at everyone packing up. I can't believe it, she said. We actually got through everything. Kina grinned. We should study like this every time. Soda frowned. Absolutely not. Yuto smirked. Oh, you'll be begging for season 2 of Who Wants to Not Fail This Test? Never. Maybe. Fine. As they stepped into the hallway, Yuto lingered behind, filming one last clip. The empty clubroom, the messy desks, the faint laughter echoing down the corridor. He whispered to the camera, and thus concludes our educational experiment. Lesson learned. Sometimes, the best way to remember something is to laugh while you're doing it. He paused, lowering the camera slightly, smiling. Maybe chaos is just another kind of teaching. Then he turned and jogged after his friends, shouting, Wait up! I need B-roll of us walking into the sunset. Yuto! Haruka yelled from down the hall. Pure cinema, he cried. The camera kept rolling. Because Yuto never really turned it off, not when the world kept giving him reasons to laugh, to learn, and to share it all. Chapter 11. Documentary in progress. The school was quiet after hours. Golden dusk filtered through the windows, dust motes drifting like lazy sparks in the still air. And in the clubroom, the only sound was the soft hum of Haruka's laptop and the occasional clack of keyboard keys. Editing week had begun. Yuto had declared it creative hibernation time. Like bears, he'd said, except instead of sleeping, we awaken pure cinematic genius. Then he promptly fell asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket patterned with cartoon penguins. So, yes, it was accurate. Haruka adjusted her headphones, scrolling through the mountain of footage. Clips and clips and clips. Yuto's endless narration, Soda's deadpan muttering, Kana's giggles, Minori's camera tilts, hallway escapades, cafeteria coups, test prep chaos. Every moment crammed full of life. She sighed, half exasperated, half amused. How does he make this much nonsense look? Heartfelt, she murmured. The timeline on her screen was a maze, each clip labeled with Yuto's chaotic notes. Epic entry, slow-mo hair flip, lunch lady confrontation powerful energy, Haruka's glare #7, used for trailer. Sota refuses joy again. Documentary rule #1, always keep filming, I fall downstairs here. Haruka rubbed her temples. This is going to take forever. But when she pressed play, she couldn't stop watching. On screen, Yuto's voice filled the room. Observe the typical student in its natural habitat, studying desperately, sustained only by caffeine and hope. Cut 2. Kana yawning mid-equation, Soda tossing an eraser, Haruka sipping tea with murder in her eyes. Laughter bubbled out of her before she could stop it. She leaned back in the chair, smiling. Idiot. Hours slipped by. The more she edited, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about Yuto. Yes, he was everywhere, talking, joking, overacting, waving the camera like a sword, but through his chaos, everyone else had started to shine. There was Kana, doodling in the margins of her notes and laughing whenever someone looked stressed. Sota, pretending to hate the camera, but secretly checking his hair when he thought no one noticed. Minori, quietly capturing beauty in the mundane sunlight on a desk, friends mid-laugh. And Haruka herself, somewhere between director and unwilling straight man. The class clown documentary had somehow turned into a portrait of them all. She clicked to a random clip. The audio crackled with wind. Yuto, off-screen, said softly, "You know, I think people forget how funny life is. Not like, haha, funny, but the kind that makes you breathe a little lighter." Then silence followed by someone Kana, maybe laughing in the distance. Haruka sat there, headphones on, her expression gentling. That wasn't part of a bit. That was real. Yuto being sincere without meaning to be. "Hey," a voice said behind her. She turned Yuto, awake now, hair sticking up at impossible angles, holding 2 cans of vending machine coffee. "You're still at it?" he asked, handing her one. "I thought editors were supposed to sleep occasionally." "I'm trying to find a story," she said, eyes on the screen, "but I think it's already there." He sat on the desk beside her, swinging his legs like a kid. "Well, it's supposed to be about me, right? My dazzling clownery?" She smirked. "That's what you said, but..." She clicked play. The screen showed Yuto goofing off, Haruka scolding him, everyone laughing. Then a cut Minori's footage from the cafeteria. Yuto handing his empty bento to Haruka, her giving him half of hers. The smallest, simplest act. Haruka said quietly, "It's not really about you." Yuto blinked. "Oh?" "It's about us. The people who somehow turned your chaos into something good." Yuto watched, thoughtful. The screen flickered through more moments. Soda's sarcastic grin, Kana's sketches, the substitute teacher's laughter, Yuto's field trip monologue while tripping over a root. "Everyone looks happy," Yuto murmured. "They are," Haruka said, "because you make them laugh, even when you're being a pain." He laughed softly. "That's my art form." Silence lingered comfortable, easy. Haruka resumed editing, trimming a clip. Yuto watched her for a moment, then leaned over, peering at the screen. "Hey, don't cut that part." "The part where you knock over the tripod?" "Yeah." "It's useless footage." "It's real footage," he said, smiling. "That's the story. The mistakes, the bloopers, the weird stuff we don't plan." She raised an eyebrow. "You're surprisingly sentimental today." "I'm a multifaceted genius," he replied. "Sometimes I feel emotions between pratfalls." She chuckled. "Fine, I'll keep it." Later, when everyone else had gone home, Haruka exported the first draft. The screen read, "Class Clown, a documentary." Rough cut #1. The opening shot was the same as always. Yuto introducing himself like a celebrity no one asked for. But the rest of the laughter, the chaos, the friendship, turned it into something else entirely. Not just a documentary. A memory. Haruka stretched, smiling to herself. Yuto had fallen asleep again, head tilted back, soft snores echoing across the clubroom. The camera still rolling on the table caught her smiling at him. She whispered to it, half laughing, "Guess this is the part where the narrator says something poetic, huh?" Pause. Let's just say this even chaos has heart. The next morning, the media club gathered to watch the first cut. They laughed, cheered, cringed, and shouted at the screen. It was messy, uneven, and utterly alive. And when the credits rolled, temporary credits, still full of typos, Haruka looked around at her friends, at Yuto's proud grin, Kaina's tears of laughter, Soda's faint smile, and thought, this is it. The story was never about the documentary. It was about the people who made it. And for once, Yuto didn't say anything clever. He just looked at the screen, a little amazed. When the final frame faded, he said quietly, "Don't cut the bloopers." Haruka smiled. "Wouldn't dream of it." The camera stayed rolling, because somehow it always did. And maybe that was the real secret. Yuto never just filmed moments. He made them. Chapter 12. Premiere night, the chaotic masterpiece. The school gymnasium had never looked so alive. String lights looped across the rafters, paper banners swayed gently with the hum of chatter, and the faint scent of popcorn drifted through the air. Students were dressed in casual festival clothes, hoodies, uniforms half unbuttoned, handmade pins for their clubs proudly gleaming. In one corner, a giant projector flickered on and off as Soda argued with the AV equipment like it had personally offended him. "It was working 5 minutes ago." "That's what you said before the fire drill incident," Haruka muttered. Yuto was already bouncing between rows of folding chairs, passing out popcorn and yelling, "This is history, people! The future of cinema! You'll tell your grandchildren you were here." "Yuto," Haruka said without looking up, "if you keep hyping it up, they'll expect competence." He grinned. "I thrive on low expectations." At the back of the gym, Kana was pinning a small paper sign to the wall. It read, "Media Club presents Class Clown the documentary." Below it, in much smaller handwriting, "Sorry in advance." The crowd was bigger than they expected. Class 2B had shown up in full force, but so had students from other grades, even a few teachers. Minori, ever the quiet observer, whispered, "Do you think they're expecting an actual documentary?" Haruka sighed. "They're expecting something." Yuto, overhearing, placed a hand on his chest dramatically. "They're expecting art." "Then they're in trouble," Soda said, hitting the projector with a firm thunk. The image sprang to life. There, fixed with love and brute force. Lights, camera, showtime. The gym dimmed. The murmurs faded. And on the giant white sheet that served as their screen, Yuto's face appeared uncomfortably close, his eyes wide, his hair half in frame. "Is it on?" "Waito, good evening, dear viewers. You are about to witness the definitive exploration of the modern high school ecosystem. Starring me, also featuring other humans." Laughter rippled through the audience immediately. Haruka buried her face in her hands. "He started with that take?" Yuto beamed. "Of course I did, pure charisma." The documentary unfolded like a fever dream, but a strangely beautiful one. Clips cut together in uneven rhythm. Yuto narrating over shots of the hallway like a nature show. Haruka sighing while taking notes. Kana accidentally spilling juice on the tripod. Sota attempting a serious interview that devolved into mock tears. But in between the chaos were quieter moments, unedited glimpses that Haruka hadn't realized would hit so hard. The lunch lady's smile when Yuto thanked her after the cafeteria coup. The substitute teacher's goofy grin as he joined the class's improvised, dramatic Zoom ritual. Kana sketching during lunch, the light catching her pencil. Soda asleep at his desk, a small sticky note on his back reading, "Sound guy, do not disturb." And Yuto laughing, running, living. Never still, never boring. Halfway through, the crowd was roaring with laughter. "Wait, did he actually trip during that scene?" Someone shouted. "Yes," Kana yelled back from the front row. "That wasn't planned." "Method acting," Yuto called proudly. Every frame seemed to draw the school closer together. Shared memories projected larger than life. By the time the midterm madness segment rolled, complete with fake quiz buzzers and audience laughter tracks, even the teachers were chuckling. Haruka glanced at Yuto. For once, he wasn't watching the audience. He was watching the screen quietly, eyes shining. The final montage. The music and upbeat tune Minori had composed on her phone began to swell. Clips of laughter, pranks, and bright moments stitched together like pieces of sunlight. Every face smiling, every moment alive. Then the voiceover. Yuto's voice, soft this time. They say documentaries are about truth, but I think truth's overrated. Sometimes it's better to remember things how they felt. The screen showed the media club posing together, half out of frame, someone's thumb over the lens. Then the camera zoomed out too far, showing the messy clubroom cups, tripods, laughter everywhere. Maybe this isn't a perfect movie, but it's ours, and that's kind of perfect enough. Fade to black. Then white text. Directed by everyone. For a long moment's silence. Then applause, a huge, echoing, joyous applause that filled the gym. Cheers, whistles, laughter. Someone shouted, "Encore!" Someone else yelled, "Class Clown 2, Electric Boogaloo!" Haruka felt her chest tighten in that funny, light way when you're too happy to breathe. Yuto stood frozen, hands slightly raised as if stunned. "Wait, they liked it?" Soda snorted. "You thought they wouldn't?" "I mean, it's us," Yuto said. "We're a mess." "Yeah," Kana said, smiling, "but we're a funny mess." The principal even came up afterward, dabbing her eyes dramatically. "Deeply moving," she said, "and educational in a way I can't explain." Yuto bowed so low he nearly fell over. "Thank you. I dedicate this Oscar to cafeteria courage and the power of friendship." Haruka laughed. "You're unbelievable." Later that evening, when the gym had emptied and only the media club remained, the projector light flickered across the empty chairs. Yuto stood in the middle of the rows, staring at the still frame frozen on the screen, a blurry shot of everyone laughing in the clubroom. Haruka approached quietly. "You okay?" "Yeah." He rubbed the back of his neck. "It's weird seeing yourself like that, you know? You don't realize how much you're actually there in people's days until you watch it." She smiled softly. "You mean you finally noticed you're loved?" He grinned. "I suspected it, but confirmation's nice." As they packed up, Minori hummed the closing song. Kana doodled a small caricature of Yuto on the back of the poster, him holding the camera like a sword. Haruka looked at it and said, "You know, maybe we should make a sequel." Yuto lit up. "Yes. Class Clown 2, Clown Harder." "Maybe not that title." Soda, carrying the projector, added dryly, "If there's a sequel, I'm demanding hazard pay." Outside, the night air was crisp, full of festival leftovers, laughter, music, distant fireworks from another club's event. Yuto stretched his arms out wide, walking backward down the path. "Well, team, what did we learn today?" "Not to trust you with editing privileges," Haruka said. "That chaos brings people together," Kana offered. "That popcorn shouldn't be stored near the AV outlet," Soda muttered. Yuto pointed finger guns at all of them. "Correct. And also, that laughter is the only subject I'll ever get an A in." They walked home together under the glowing lanterns. No fanfare, no big speech, just laughter drifting into the night, the kind that fills all the empty spaces in your chest and leaves warmth behind. And as Haruka glanced back at the school, she saw the faint glow of the projector still flickering inside, replaying their film one last time. The blurry faces of friends mid-laugh, mid-life, mid-chaos, frozen in perpetual joy. The night had one more line left to write, though. On the black screen after the credits, in Yuto's handwriting, shaky and bold. Maybe the punchline was that we were all in on the joke. Chapter 13. Roll credits, but keep filming anyway. The clubroom felt different after the festival, not quieter exactly, but softer. Post-celebration air hung like the last notes of a favorite song. The posters from the premiere still fluttered on the wall, and the projector case sat open like a half-forgotten treasure chest, and a lone tripod leaned against the chalkboard, as if resting after a long, heroic battle. Yuto walked in humming dramatically, clutching his camera. "Good morning, team. Ready for our final scene." Haruka looked up from her laptop. "Final scene? We already finished the documentary." "Correction," Yuto said, pointing at the ceiling. "We finished a documentary. But this, my dear producer, is the post-credits scene. The emotional epilogue. The Marvel moment of our humble masterpiece." Sota sighed from the couch. "If this ends with you turning into a superhero, I'm walking out." "You can't walk out," Yuto said seriously. "You're contractually obligated as sound guy/reluctant voice of reason." Kana laughed softly, sketching the group on her notepad. "What's the plot this time?" "The plot," Yuto said, striking a pose, "is life itself." He set up the camera in its usual spot, crooked, slightly tilted, somehow perfect. The red light blinked on. Haruka groaned. "Don't tell me we're doing another monologue." "Not a monologue," Yuto said. "An ensemble moment. The curtain call." "Should we bow?" Kana asked. "Only metaphorically." Minori peeked through the lens and smiled. "You know, you look happier than usual." "Of course," Yuto said, brushing imaginary dust off his blazer. "I'm being filmed. I'm in my natural habitat." The others began to settle in. Haruka cross-legged on the floor with her laptop. Sota half asleep with a soda can balanced on his chest. Kana leaning against the window, sketching the way the sunlight spilled across the floor. Yuto panned the camera slowly across them all. "Day one," he narrated in a mock-deep voice. "We were but clueless amateurs. Haruka was cold, Sota was cynical, and Kana was—" "Still waiting for you to make sense," Haruka interrupted. He grinned. "And now look at us, artists, comedians, survivors of cafeteria revolts and substitute teacher uprisings." Sota lifted his soda can. "To chaos endured." They all clinked imaginary glasses. For a while, the camera rolled in comfortable silence. Outside, a faint breeze rattled the windows. A pigeon cooed from the roof. Someone down the hall was practicing trumpet badly. Kana broke the quiet. "You know, it's weird to think it's over." Haruka nodded. "It's not really over. We're just done filming." "Same thing, isn't it?" Yuto shook his head. "No way. You can't end a documentary about life. You can only pause it." Sota opened one eye. "That's the most profound thing you've said all semester." Yuto pointed finger guns at him. "Growth arc achieved." Minori lowered the camera. "So what is this scene for?" Yuto looked around at his friends, his expression gentler than usual. "For us. For the blooper reel, maybe. For whoever finds this footage later and wonders what kind of idiots we were." Haruka smiled faintly. "Idiots who had a lot of fun." He nodded. "Exactly." He stood in front of the camera now, hands in his pockets. For once, no exaggerated gestures, no fake accents. "Okay, rolling," Minori said. Yuto looked into the lens. "So, what have I learned?" he began. "That school is weird. That friends are weirder. That cameras are terrible at staying level, but mostly," he hesitated and smiled, "that life's funnier when you don't try to make it perfect." Haruka looked up at him, her expression soft. "That's your closing line?" she asked. He shrugged. "It's either that or buy my merchandise." Everyone groaned in unison. The red light blinked out. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Kana laughed quietly, the kind of small, real laugh that fills a room with warmth. "Can we take one last photo?" she asked. "Self-timer, obviously," Yuto said, adjusting the camera again. "Group shot of legends." They gathered close together, Haruka pretending to look annoyed, Sota actually smiling this time, Kana holding up a peace sign, Minori framed between them. Yuto darted into the middle just as the camera clicked. The picture caught them perfectly. Laughter mid-breath, sunlight catching in their hair, a frozen moment of everything they were. As they packed up for the last time, Haruka unplugged the camera. She hesitated. What should we do with all the footage? Yuto slung his bag over his shoulder. Keep it. Someday we'll look back and realize we filmed proof that joy existed here. Soda nodded slowly. Proof, huh? That's one word for it. Kana smiled. A love letter might be a better one. Yuto blinked, then laughed. Yeah, a love letter written in bloopers. They stepped out into the afternoon light one by one, the door swinging shut behind them with a soft click. The camera, still resting on the desk, kept rolling for another few seconds, an empty frame of the clubroom, sunlight spilling across the empty chairs, a faint echo of laughter lingering in the air. Then the red light blinked off. Cut to black. And in white letters across the silent screen. Directed by everyone. Post-credits scene. Fade in. The clubroom weeks later. Someone, maybe a first year, opens the door and finds the camera still sitting there. They press play. Static flickers, then Yuto's voice echoes through the speakers. If you're watching this, congrats, you've discovered the lost tapes of legends. Handle with care. Also, don't erase the footage unless you want to anger the ghosts of comedy past. Laughter in the background. The first year smiles, shakes their head, and closes the door again. Outside, the sun keeps shining as if the laughter never really stopped. And that's how their story ends, not with credits, not with a goodbye, but with a feeling that somewhere the camera is still rolling. Catching another day, another joke, another round of warm, ridiculous friendship. Because with Yuto and the media club, the film never really ends.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay safe.